Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our information session on the George Moore Scholarship Programme. It's great to see so many of you join us today. It's excellent. My name is Rory McGrillen, and I work in Queen's Global Opportunities team. We are kindly joined today by Dr. Claina Hannon. Claina is the founding director of the George Moore Scholarship Programme. And we are also joined today by two Queen's alumni. We have Frances Logan and Emma Shaw, who are current George Moore Scholars. And during this session, we'll speak with both Emma and Frances to hear about their experiences to date. If you have any questions throughout the session, please add them to the chat function on the right-hand side, and we will go through the questions just at the end of the session. So at this stage, I want to say thank you very much to Claina for kindly offering to deliver the session today, and I'll now pass over to yourself.
Thanks, Rory, and thanks for the invitation to speak to the Queen's undergrads, and a big welcome as well to Frances and Emma if she's online. So as Rory said, I'm the founding director of the George Moore Scholars Programme, and for the next 10 minutes I'm going to run you through a kind of high-level overview of the programme. I'd encourage you to put in as many questions as you have in the chat function, as Rory said, and between myself and the scholars we will do our best to get to all those questions before the hour is out. Okay, so this is to give you an overview of what's happened in the last 2 recruitment rounds for the George Moore Scholars Programme. It's a young programme, so we started recruiting in early 2020, just after lockdown, just after the first lockdown, and since then, we have supported 55 students to undertake master's level studies in the USA, Canada, and the UK. We've allocated €2 million to those students, and the students represent 14 higher education institutions all across the island of Ireland. The current scholars come from 20 counties across Ireland. And at the moment, we have 42 students who are commencing a master's degree and 5 who are continuing from last year. The other students completed their studies this year, so we had a number of one-year students who've already completed. In terms of demographics, we have at the moment fewer females than males, 22 females and 33 males. We have scholars across a whole range of different disciplinary areas. I think the current scholars are across 29 different areas, some of which are interdisciplinary. And they're in 31 universities across the jurisdictions where we offer support. So it's a diverse programme. It offers an amazing opportunity to have substantial financial support for study abroad, and it's not particular or specific to any disciplinary area. Okay. So what are we looking for in the 2022 scholars? Well, first of all, we hope to support at least 40 students from across Ireland. We are looking for academic talent and a passion for your chosen field. We offer support for either 1 or 2 years master's programs, and that can be in the USA, Canada, or UK across any disciplinary area. So, completing your application. Well, the first thing I would advise is to research your options. So, I guess the advice I would give is dream big, so go after what, if there were no financial obstacles, what would be the course you'd most love to do? And then find out everything you can about it. You need 2 academic referees, so I would strongly advise you to contact whoever you think could be an academic referee for you as soon as possible, because they can draft the reference for you And when you submit your application, you will get a link that you send your referees, and they use that link to upload the reference that they have drafted. So the more notice you give them, the better. If you feel like you don't know any of the academics who've taught you that well, just use the next couple of weeks to cultivate some relationship with them. Ideally, you should send them your CV and any other kind of highlights from your academic experience or your personal experience that you think you would like them to reflect in the reference. However, their reference is mainly meant to be an academic reference. And I'd say as well, even if you feel you don't know them very well, they will see it as part of their responsibility to provide references for you, because it is part of their responsibility. And I know, if it's any encouragement, that this year we had over 300 academics submit phenomenal references for the applicants. And again, the applicants were off-site learning remotely. So, you know, most academics will really want to support you as much as they can in reaching your full potential and in helping you to get this opportunity and secure it. So I'd strongly encourage you as well to go on to mindaclient.com, which is the application portal we use. And the link to that is on our website, georgemorescholars.ie. If you go on to the application portal, at least by beginning an application, you'll be able to see what's required of you. And the main aspects of the application are a research or taught master's statement, which is 3,000 characters long, not very long, a personal statement, and then a detailed budget. The budget would normally include your tuition, your travel, your living expenses, any other educational costs. All of that would be included in your budget. Okay, so now, sorry if you're hearing background noise here. There are teenagers on midterm break. So what will it mean to be a George Moore Scholar? Well, first of all, George Moore actually went to the US himself in the 1970s. He went to George Washington University after having attended UCD as an undergrad. And he did an MBA and a DBA over there. Both, you know, all of that education was possible because of scholarships that George secured by virtue of his own talent and passion. And he then went on to found a number of extraordinarily successful companies, the last of which was kind of an early stage data analytics company. So, you know, this program is built on funding arising from George's success. And I think it's an amazing opportunity to follow in the footsteps of somebody who is so successful and trailblazing in their own industry. You'll also be representing a cohort that signifies excellence. So, you know, it's a rigorous process, but not an impossible process to come through. And, you know, it'll be a great experience for you exploring what opportunities are out there and then putting yourself into the mix to try and get that opportunity for yourself, to prove to yourself as well what you're capable of. And most importantly, possibly, it offers significant financial and personal support. So, you know, the cost of higher education study in the US is prohibitive for most people. It is one of the most, if not the most expensive education systems in the world. But, you know, at the highest levels of higher education, it's also an excellent system. So I would say it's just going to be a life-changing opportunity for the scholars who are selected. Okay, and that's kind of the broad overview. I strongly encourage you to start your application at georgemorescholars.ie by clicking the Apply Now button. You can save your progress, and the earlier you start, the better, because then you'll be able to revise it and review it and maybe get a friend to look at it and all of those things, which will help make it a really high quality application. So that's it.
Lena, thank you very much for that. I'm just going to take a moment to answer some of the questions. There's 3 or 4 come in there just while you were speaking. There's a question from Frank saying, can academic referee be a secondary school teacher, or does it have to be university lecturers?
I would say it needs to be university lecturers, because what happens with the completed applications is all the eligible applications are sent out for academic review to academics in a different institution to your own one. And the kind of information that the academic reviewer will be looking for is your higher education progress. So, you would be including transcripts in your application, and ideally whoever is giving you references will have taught you a course or a module or something of that nature, and will be able to therefore write to in some detail about your ability and your contribution so far academically.
Very good. And I liked your advice about reaching out to academic references now rather than waiting. Quite often the academics will say we don't mind doing a reference, but we like to be asked just with other time commitments. There's a question from Ruth, and I was wondering if this program is also open to recent graduates. So she graduated in summer 2021.
Yeah. So for the George Moore Scholars this year, it is open to 2021 and 2022 graduates. So those who graduated this year and those who will graduate next year. There's also a category of a smaller number of scholarships for early career scholars. And they are people who may have graduated from 2017 onwards and who need to build experience, who needed to build experience within a particular field in order to make the best of the masters they're going into. So that may be, for example, a public policy master's, a health policy master's, something of that nature, where the chances of you benefiting from the course are increased by having some relevant experience.
Very good, thank you. I also received an email in the lead up to today's session from a student who's currently doing a master's, and they were inquiring if they could apply to do another master's. They'll be graduating this summer.
No. So it's only open to first-time master's students.
Okay.
So they wouldn't be eligible.
Thank you. Can EU nationals who are on the settlement scheme apply?
EU nationals can apply, but they need to have completed most of their education in Ireland. So if they happen to have arrived just at the end of primary school or early stages of secondary, they could apply, and then we can take it through the eligibility process. But if they've recently arrived or arrived in the last 3 years, for example, then they won't be eligible.
Thanks very much. Just one more question before we'll have a chat with Francis. Lydia has asked, in the application process, and I'm sure Francis will add to this, in the application process, what are the key things you're looking for in the personal statement and study plan? So have you any tips or advice?
Well, we're looking for authenticity. We're not looking for kind of LinkedIn jargon, I would say. So we're looking for someone's real lived experience and their voice and a sense of the impact they want to have in the world, and how they have formulated that passion, what has led them to that dream. So that will be a mix of kind of academic experience through secondary and third level, but it'll also be partly informed by your own background and experiences. So we're really looking for your own voice and a clear statement in both academic and personal terms of how you think this experience will transform you.
That's great. Thank you very much. And just in terms of sort of personal statement advice, there's a lot of resources on the Queen's Careers website. And if students would like to book in for a one-to-one consultation, they can do that through My Future. And they can have a 30-minute consultation with the careers consultant just to discuss what they may want to reflect on including in their personal statements. So at this stage, there's another few questions coming in there, but I want at this stage move on to have a chat with Frances. And can I ask her to turn her microphone or camera on?
Yes, hello.
Frances, thanks very much for joining us today. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
It's great to have you come along and join the session. Rather than me introduce you, can I get you just to introduce yourself and give us a bit of background on what you did at Queen's, first of all?
Yeah, sure. So I am, well, a fairly recent graduate of Queen's. I graduated in international politics and conflict studies, and then now I'm studying a master's in public policy and management at the University of Glasgow. So, I mean, I loved my time at Queen's, and I think the main reason was because I got quite involved in, I guess, the clubs and societies scene. So I did a lot of work with an organisation called Belfast Marrow. They're a blood cancer charity. And I think I took every opportunity to do any sort of study tour. So I went on the Brussels study tour and one with the school of HAP to Estonia and Latvia. So yes, definitely taking advantage of everything I could.
That's great. We always appreciate a wee bit of a plug as well for some of the services the university provide. And in terms of, give us a bit of background then on what you're currently doing for the George Moore Scholarship Program, and then we'll look at why you applied and what you were getting out of it.
Sure. So yes, as I said, I applied for public policy and management. And as Clayna had mentioned, this was kind of a culmination of all of my interests, both academic and like personal interests as well. So I knew that I was most interested in food policy. So this was bringing together my interest in health policy, for example, with my interest in Belfast Marrow, my interest in environment, all of these things kind of coming together. And that was kind of my first reason for applying. So, I mean, outside of the excitement of living in a new city, I think I've been able to see how each of the modules so far that I've been studying has really aligned with my professional goals and my research interests. So it's going really well so far.
And I suppose no offense to Glasgow, but when you're looking at a program such as this, you're thinking maybe America, or you're thinking like North America or Canada. What made you choose University of Glasgow?
Yeah, well, so with my interest in food policy, I mean, I had studied in Scotland for a little while in my undergrad, and I knew that the political system here had a really interesting approach to food policy. So I knew that this is where I wanted to go. So, I mean, I was looking, I guess, at the country level, so Scotland, and then on the city level as well. So Glasgow has had some really interesting approaches to food policy, and had some great, I guess, pressure groups and other groups in the city that I knew that I would really want to get involved with if I came here.
So there's opportunities within the university, but also outside as well.
Yeah, for sure.
And did you sort of research other programs in other universities as well before making that choice?
Yes, I think it was quite a long process for sure. I mean, I think I researched every university that I could think of that was doing public policy, just so that I knew that I was making the right choice. And I know that we'll probably get onto this later, but I think if you're not entirely sure exactly where you want to go to study, something that I did was make, I guess, like a table or an Excel document of just the pros and cons of each university, the programs, so that you're not going back to, look at the University of Manchester for the third time because you can't remember the reason why you didn't choose it. So I guess going through it in a really systematic way is very beneficial to save you time.
Very good. And I suppose Clayna made reference to that, like sort of dream big, like look at every option available and don't rule anything out yet. And the fact that you'd researched a lot of universities would suggest you did that same thing.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, looking at absolutely everything, as I said, the country and city level, but also who are the people that are doing research that you're most interested in? Where are they based? what modules that the university offered. That was another reason why I chose Glasgow. There were some quite unique modules and combinations of modules that you couldn't get anywhere else. So really looking at all levels of the program.
Very good. So there's one side of the research side of it, and getting that first-hand information is very, very important. How did you then approach the application process?
So I think it's a cliche, but always starting early. As I said, or it's been said already, I think your referees like to have a bit of time to do that. But I'm sure you'll remember that I got in contact with you last year just with a few questions that I have myself, and just really using the services that Queen's provide. I took advantage of being able to book a careers appointment for my CV as well. And I think, yeah, Queen's were excellent and really supporting me with that.
Very good. No, that's again, that's a nice plug to use the support, use the support and service available, and obviously, reach out to sort of contacts within university. And were you sort of last minute application, or you started early, or did you sort of sit it and review it for a while, or?
I'm trying to think. So I know that I started my research early because I knew that would take quite a while. Once I'd convinced myself that I should actually apply, I then got in contact with my referees. But I mean, I'm quite a last minute person in terms of writing, just because I can't put something down. So I think I did eventually submit my application fairly close to the deadline, but there was a lot of build up to that.
So it took a bit of time. In terms of so I suppose cost does impact a lot of sort of programs that sort of students are considering doing this, particularly in international ones, and we appreciate that. This scholarship is obviously very heavily funded. What was your experience of covering costs and considering costs, and also as part of the application submitting your sort of spreadsheet of potential costings?
Yeah, so I think the first thing to note was that I applied for, or I knew that I was going to apply for a postgraduate loan from the Northern Ireland Student Loans Company. Obviously, I think that only applies to universities in the UK, but that was at least some money that I said that I would be able to put forward for the scholarship. But I think it's not just about the fees. I knew that accommodation was obviously going to be the next biggest cost. So I definitely had a look around on the university website for how much the university accommodation would cost. But then also on websites, I know in the UK there's one called Spare Room, or just, I guess, general areas where you could go to find how much accommodation would cost. I'd say that's the next biggest thing to look at. But I know for the University of Glasgow, there was quite a big section on their website of how much to budget. They had broken down how much they would recommend to budget for your program for a year. So be sure to check out that the university website they might have something on that. And just thinking very carefully about your daily costs as well. I mean, you're going to have to get there. How much is your transport going to cost? And I guess things like your food every week and month. It's really worth taking the time to think quite carefully over things like that.
Very good. So if you just sort of put, as you say, pull together a spreadsheet and, approximate the costs, and then sort of take it from there, yeah?
Yeah, oh, for sure, yes.
It's interesting you mentioned the Glasgow University's website and the advice they have. Queen's has a similar one, so I'd imagine a lot of universities will have similar sort of guidance and useful information they got to use rather than starting from the very beginning yourself.
Yeah, and I think they would kind of bring up things like maybe you hadn't thought of before as well. So yeah, I definitely think that was a good resource for me.
Excellent. And in terms of experience to date, what do you feel you've gained from it?
I mean, I think outside of the program, there have been so many opportunities for me to get involved with my research area of interest. I mean, I actually ended up living beside a social enterprise who are trying to build a more sustainable food system. So I guess that was kind of luck. But I mean, something that I'm also doing, I've started yesterday and I'm going straight after this, is obviously the build up to COP26. I've ended up being a youth delegate for the youth process of that. So, I mean, already I've met people from all over the world just from that one experience. And within my program as well, I think there's maybe only 5 or 6 people from the UK. It's an incredibly international program. So already I've been seeing how other political processes work, how other countries like approach their policy processes. So it's been just really great to spark ideas about what I'd like to write my dissertation on, and ideas for me as well to bring back to Northern Ireland as well.
Fantastic. Excellent. You mentioned a bit of luck there, but I suppose the more people you talk to and the more things you do, the more opportunities that arise.
Yeah. Oh no, absolutely. Even after only one day yesterday, I there's so many more things that I want to apply to. It's great.
Excellent. No, it's excellent. Is there, I suppose you've mentioned sort of things that you're getting involved in. Is there any specific experiences that sort of have been a highlight so far?
In Glasgow in particular?
In Glasgow, yeah.
Yeah, so there's a food cooperative here, so that's been really interesting to get to see where local food comes from. I know this is quite specific to my research interest, but being able to see where food comes from in Glasgow and getting to distribute that to other students. The COP26 has been very interesting as well. I'm really looking forward to the next 2 days. There's meant to be some incredible speakers. I think a highlight, I mean, Nicola Sturgeon turned up to our event yesterday. We weren't really expecting that. It's just great. I mean, it's experiences that I wouldn't have been able to get just staying in Belfast. I love Belfast to bits, but it's great to be able to be in a bit more of a lively environment for the next year.
Very good. No, thanks very much. Francis, in terms of sort of just to sort of wrap this section up, is there any advice that you'd share with the students that are thinking I would like to apply or are currently sort of making their application?
Yeah, I mean, I think the main thing I would say is don't self-reject from the process. I mean, even if you're not so sure that you would even get the scholarship, I was very much in that position when I initially applied. It's definitely worth applying for the process itself. So it's very rare that you're going to have an incentive to sit down and think exactly, what you'd like to do in your future, what your research interests are, where you would like to live. So it's really worth applying just for the process itself. I think something else, learning from experience of my application last year, don't compare yourself, I think, to other scholars from previous years. I mean, you have your own experiences, your research interests, and I think ability to create impact in your own research area. So, I mean, I don't think that's something that you can compare. So maybe lay off on the LinkedIn comparisons. I think that really impacted me last year.
No, that's great advice. I suppose, unfortunately, Emma hasn't been able to join us today, but if there's any information she can add to this, I'll certainly sort of send it around in a follow-up link as well as recording this. I just want to say, Francis, thank you very much for taking the time to join us today. The information and the experience you've shared with us have been invaluable. I'm sure to a lot of applications, a lot of students. Kleina, there's a few questions that have come in. I'm just going to go through them. There was one from Leah.
Yep.
And I'd actually missed this one previously. She says, I'm currently in my second year for undergraduate, and she's going to graduate in 2023. When would I look to apply to the scholarship? So I'm assuming we're next.
So she could apply next. She could apply next year, because next year's program will be for next year's application round will be for 2023.
So it's this time next year she can start to make an application. But Leah, the fact that you've come along today, it's a great starting point to sort of build up your awareness, the program, your knowledge, and your contacts as well. So it's great to have you along.
Absolutely.
In terms of, there's another question: can Irish nationals apply even if they only did their higher education in the island of Ireland, for example, Northern Ireland, but did not do their primary or secondary education in Ireland? So it's done their primary school education and then didn't do their secondary education, but are now back in Queen's. But
okay, so they did primary in Ireland, secondary abroad, and now they're in Queen's.
Oh, sorry, no, I've missed it. If they only did their higher education on the island of Ireland, but did
probably won't get through the eligibility checks because it's usually about 80% education on the island of Ireland. That person could email me if they want at info@georgemorescholars.ie, but I would say it's reasonably unlikely they'll be eligible.
So, Leah, just in that case, if you want to drop an email just to get a bit more clarity, that'd be great.
Yeah.
How many applications were received last year versus how many awards were given out?
So we had about 150 completed applications. We interviewed 70 of those after academic review, and we selected 42. So the odds last year were pretty good. I don't know how many completed applications we'll get this year, but there's a bit of effort required in completing the application. So, I don't anticipate the numbers will increase tremendously, and your chances of getting it are much higher if you make an application.
Very good. As Francis said, don't rule yourself out.
Yeah.
There's another question there from Lydia. If a candidate is successful, are they awarded funding to cover all the costs in their budget plan, or are some candidates only offered a portion of these costs?
Yeah, it really depends on the program. So, I would say for most scholars, they've been awarded, a lot of them have been awarded 100% of the cost. Particularly, I would say the UK and Canada scholars, because the costs are much lower. There are some scholars where their costs were like, 80 to 120,000. So they did not get a full award at that level. They got kind of, I would say, 80% of the overall cost. So I would say, look for the program that best suits you rather than the most expensive program. And hopefully they're not the same thing. The US programs are very expensive. There's some colleges where they will give kind of financial aid or tuition waivers. For example, NYU in New York, if you bring private funding or your own scholarship funding, they will give you a tuition waiver of 50% of the cost or something like that. So, there are some areas where your costs can be cut down because the institution itself will contribute funding. But a lot of them don't, in the US. So you're talking about big ticket prices. So I know there were a couple of people this year who applied to, very expensive programs in the US, and they didn't get 100% of the funding. They would have got probably more like 75 to 80% of the funding.
Okay. Thank you very much. Kleine, that seems to be all the questions we have at the moment. At this stage, I just want to take the opportunity to say a big thank you to yourself and also to Francis. It's great to get a bit more information in the program, and I would encourage everyone to make an application. I think at that stage, yes, we'll wrap the session up. If there's any questions that students think of in the sort of later today or in the coming week, they can email yourselves at info@georgemore.
Yeah.
Or if there's any support.
info@georgemorescholars.ie. And we'd love to see some Queen's applications coming in. So
yes, we would indeed. And if there's any sort of university related questions that I or my colleagues within the Career Service can answer, please just send an email to goglobal@qb.ac.uk. Oh, there's just one final question came in there. Does budgeting cover tuition fees too, or should we apply for loans for these?
No, it covers tuition fees. That's actually the bulk of the cost. So, your budget would usually be your tuition fees, accommodation, living costs, could be visa or health costs if it's the US. It's usually a pretty big budget. So put it all in there, and if you come through the process, we'll do our best to get as much of the cost to you as we can.
That's great. So at this stage, I'm going to wrap the session up. Cliona, thanks very much again for joining us today. And Francis,
No problem.
good
Thanks
luck
to
with
you and Francis.
Yeah, good luck with the rest of your masters, Francis. Keep in touch.
Thank you so much.
All
Okay.
it is. Bye bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Great to see you. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.